Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and all of you that are able to take part in this show, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, are, of course, the co hosts here on the show. And today we're going to talk about, of course, tabletop role playing games. That's what we always do here on the channel. And we often use pop culture, novels, movies, anything we get our hands on in terms of inspiration, and especially in the context of science fiction. I'm a science fiction geek at heart, and so I also love to do that for using anything I can for inspiration. And uh, dystopias and post-apocalyptic survivalism and all this kind of stuff, that's a big staple in the tabletop role-playing community. And I thought I would, like, we see many television shows and movies and novels and graphic novels that really embrace the post-apocalyptic setting. But I thought, well, there are people who never play role playing games and they are truly into prepping for the end of the world. And I thought we would use some of those real world ideas and philosophies and then use that to world build in our own setting. So, um, we're going to pull from anything from Fallout to I think there's an Apple TV show called Silo to all of the entire Mad Max movie genre and all that in between. We're going to talk about different ways people think society will end. Sometimes it's normally referred to as the end of the world, which technically isn't necessarily end of the world. It's usually referred to as an end of civilization as we know it, and sometimes that can be partial or fully and based on what apocalypse you think would or will happen will dictate the type of society that will happen afterwards if there is one. So let's get into it and let's pull up some of these um, threats to civilization and how we can world build off of them, and then some of the most common types of prepping. Now, um, this isn't me neither for or against people who are into prepping and how deeply you're into it. But those of us in the tabletop role playing community, we love thought experiments, and so we're going to use that to build for ourselves and use this vast knowledge we have, especially about the predictions of prepping and how people think about it. And then, heck, we could even design character archetypes or classes or skill sets or something like that if you're the type of individual who loves making or designing role-playing games or have an intention to do so. So um I have an article here. I guess I could share it out. I was thinking about not doing so, but sure, why not? We have an article here. Top 10 threats to survival, and we're going to just take a look at this and go down, just very generally, go down this pathway of this is from Science News, and here are the top 10 threats to the survival of civilization. I guarantee you, with you guys who are brilliant out there, I'm sure you can add another dozen or 2 dozen more to this list, especially with given science fiction and fantasy and things like that. But we're gonna pop off with a couple of big ones on this list and talk about them and what kind of civilization would exist after the fall of human civilization, and how would we describe that? And of course, there are many movies and television shows and graphic novels and regular novelizations based about this. So of course we have number 10, alien invasion. Of course we have an alien invasion. Why wouldn't we have ones, right? Alien invasions is the fear of the unknown, an outsider that's traveled across the stars to come to Earth. And even here it says, even if they appear to be friendly at first, don't be fooled by a gift book from them titled "To Serve Man." Yeah, that was a very common uh, one from the Twilight Zone, where a book was get humanity was given all these great things, and based on a book called To Serve Man, and everyone thought that it was, because humans couldn't read it, couldn't decipher it, thought that it was like a biblical text by these aliens, like it was they were here to help humanity out, which they were giving humanity lots of technology to confront the very dangers that we suffered, except they realized that it was a cookbook. Which is a little tongue in cheek. I mean, like, why would aliens like even a single human being realize that they were going to eventually be eaten? But whatever. But yeah, alien invasion, and oftentimes, when we see alien invasion, it is a catalyst that at the to reflect back to society that if aliens were to come to Earth, it would behoove us to work together for us to come together as a civilization for our own survival. And oftentimes during alien invasions, we either get one of two things. We either hyper focused on ourselves and what we would do, or there is the fracturing of all world governments and society and status levels, and you're left with just a bunch of hodgepodge of people from different levels of society working together to try to fight something off, which kind of tells us maybe we should be working together anyway. Um, we have ourselves an asteroid impact. Oftentimes, when we see this in pop culture, it's focused on the asteroid impact itself, not necessarily what happens afterwards. Although we do have many fears that an asteroid impact will kind of wipe us out like the dinosaurs. But what would happen afterwards? There's actually a great movie called Greenland, and I believe there was talks about making a Greenland 2, semi action movie, but it was given a more down to earth realism to it, which I really appreciated the way the movie was. Gerard Butler, and he has a wife and kid, and they start to get separated, and they realize that if they escape the Greenland, that there is a greater uh, possibility of them surviving. And spoiler alert for a movie that many people didn't see, they survive. But yeah, asteroid impacts and what happens afterwards. I would dare say that the aftermath of an asteroid impact that we often don't see is that if the impact is on one side of the earth, what happens to all the people on the other side? And what happens if the vast majority of an asteroid impact happens in the oceans? What would happen then? See if you guys are here. Oh, hey, this is by here. Gaster, what's going on? It says, when it comes to the concept of using a post apocalyptic setting, there are usually a few things people think about. Some people think about nuclear war, yeah, a loss of finite resources, or even zombies. But there's one concept I've always enjoyed: the concept of the world no longer being habitable for us. So a new species has come to take our place. I think the only times I've ever really seen that is like alien invasion slash terraforming, where aliens come to Earth and like they're trying to turn it into a jungle or a desert or something like that. But you don't often see like Earth going through a transformation where humans are getting pushed out because of maybe a real life species is here, whether that species is intelligent or animalistic or something like that. But yeah, I, I'm going to challenge you slightly that I think we have seen like the alien terraforming concept, but you're right. You're right. Yeah, we see zombies, which isn't listed in this science article. The zombie apocalypse and things like that. Yeah. Gaspar Suso goes on to say one of the best examples for this type of setting would be something like Planet of the Apes, where humanity was wiped out from a virus that degrades humanity but boosts the intelligence of apes. And for tabletop role playing games, I mean, it would be awesome to see like okay, you could play anything you want except a human. You could play like some of the top 10 most intelligent animal species or something. Although a lot of top 10 most intelligent animals, um I don't know how like humanistic you would want to get them, because people, you know, we know it in our community, people love to play furries, you know, basically humanoid animals that are kind of cute and stuff. But yeah, um, this one is called Bees All Die, and that's number 8 for this sciencenews.org. And Bees All Die is like one of the, I've also seen this as like genetically doing too much genetic modification on uh, crops, nutrient bearing crops like wheat and rice and things like that. I also see this as like an ecological, um, a nutrient uh, dystopia, meaning like this. I think something like this happened in the movie Interstellar, where you know, one person in the movie states something like, "We need farmers more than we need, you know, astronauts," and that's what I think of when I hear people talk about like bees dying or crops failing or being too reliant on GMOs, genetically modified organisms, where they don't naturally propagate the seeds, and then eventually we have very low crop. What would I say? Um, Crop DNAs, where we start focusing ourselves to like one type of banana and one type of tomato and one type of rice, and without the ability for it to adapt naturally, and that we would lose out on it. There's of course we have number 7 is artificial intelligence takeover. In this list, they also combine this with quantum computing, which, yeah, I get that. Although I think I would roll that into AI takeover. Of course, machines taking over our reliance on AI systems and things like that. There's always a fear of that. Uh, number 5 is one that I've heard far more recently than in the past. Is complexities instability, and the idea of collapse from complexities instability is that we start living lives with so many complexities that at a certain point there becomes a crack in the system that causes our downfall. A, a real world example of this are financial markets, where our financial markets are so intricately entwined in our society, yet so complex that we don't even understand how they work. And there's like a black box effect. Uh, Many of our social medias and technological systems have like black box effects, where it works and people work on them, but they don't understand how it works, if that makes sense. They understand it's built, but it's almost like building a structure so big no one knows what the interior structure is, what the foundation looks like any longer. And that's the fall of complexity, where society will fall because the things we rely on in society simply go away. Number 4, they say, is social media. I do, you know, there are many people today who consider the collapse of society with social media, especially if, because we can silo ourselves with social media, that so many people become, we are self perpetuating ourselves in belief systems to the point of uh, the destruction of our fellow man simply by the things that we see on in front of our faces, and our silos of information prevent us from gaining further information. So we are self perpetuating cultism by using social media. And I don't. I suppose you could say there could be the collapse of society with it. Although I would dare say it would cause a civil unrest, because people would believe things that and not be able to unbelieve them, because they're never seeing information that is counter to the thing that they want to see. Of course, we have pandemics. That's a uh, disease is a very natural one. Pandemics, disease, whether they are man-made or natural. Some have predicted it might come from outer space, like a comet or meteor that releases a spore. Maybe astronauts find this kind of thing from outer space and bring it back to Earth, or here on Earth there are, the idea of labs working on the most dangerous uh, uh, viral and bacterial things in the world to create cures. But if they're working on the most dangerous thing, it could be released. Also, weaponization, although I think viruses and pandemics are the absolute worst weapon in the world because you can never control them. Um, and the return of the return of diseases that we think we've wiped out that now are completely resistant to our ability to stop them. And of course, zombies are a side effect of that. It's like a what was this number three? Pandemics number three, and it's kind of a 3A. Zombie apocalypse is also a big one. Nuclear war, of course, nuclear, atomic, whatever. All the above. We still have an issue with having too many nuclear weapons and pointing them at each other. But yeah, nuclear war, and I think some people's fear of nuclear war aren't by nations, but by independent actors either having pocket nukes or dirty nukes, or a third party agent blames and begins a nuclear war by having it blamed on other parties. So you could have someone say, like, um, detonate a nuke in the U.S. and another nuke in Russia, and then they blame each other, and then as and then a war starts. And we've seen that plot happen in plenty of spy movies and stuff. And the last one here is climate change. Whether that is natural climate change, like a new ice age, some say that is a possibility, as well as the fact of climate change being something that we've created, as well as the climate changing due to just something external, like again, something like an asteroid impact or what have you. Very common things. Hey, by the way, thank you very much for being here, Gaster. So those are some of that. That list was just a top 10 of the ending of society. I think I've even heard of others where you could have a faction bring about the end of civilization um, uh, due to their machinations. Meaning, like, you could have people who, which this is a very strange thing to say, that um, they want to propagate like a World War III situation by working together from different parts of the world to get us to be at odds all the time. There's also the idea of proxy warring, where um, wars happen by the major countries by manipulating these smaller countries to attack each other, and then that begins to spread, and countries that really have no interest in wanting to fight each other end up getting used and abused and going after each other. um, and I've also heard of like a side portion of the end of civilization, that society withdraws from the elites who have dominated the world in the first place, and it becomes more. It's basically draconianism, totalitarianism, dictatorships of various types start spreading around the world, and then humanity just basically separates themselves from those in power, and then it just becomes us versus them, and it becomes the fall of like organized society in that case. Um, so there, and we've seen heck, like in the in like the Road Warrior movies and other things like that. Like, we've seen the fall of humanity, but even then they don't really explain what happens. They just use a lot of B-roll to, like, we killed the world and now there's nothing left. Usually abandoned buildings that have been overgrown, or nothing but uh, miles upon kilometers of just dust and debris and rust, and the the proverbial highway system that's crumbling with people walking through the streets with rusted cars that have been stacked up on each other from the old school highways that have been packed, and the skeletons in the cars that have been left there, things like that. And um, depending on the type of story you want to tell in your setting, you know, it you would have to let your players know, if you're designing this, like, are we really trying to find a way to bring back society, or is this just the new way the world is? And just be upfront about that. Like in for example, in the Fallout series or the Road Warrior series. In Fallout, we do have the televised version. Let's put it that way. Um, we do are given clues about how it is that the world did end, and and there is a mystery to it, even if there's no way to bring back society. Although maybe people are living under a lie. Whereas in the Road Warrior series, how the world ends isn't as important. It's the madness that is like a subtext to the survivalism that exists in this world, where um, you get the idea that modern society has driven itself mad, maybe due to its excesses, and then here we're living in the aftermath of a madness and insanity that has swept through society, and we are, despite it being post-apocalyptic, maybe we're still living in that world where people think of themselves in its most extreme narcissism, extreme jealousy, extreme brutalism, all taken to the extreme, and then we get ourselves like Immortan Joe and a humongous. I can't remember all the funny names that they had for the characters in the entire Road Warrior Mad Max Fury Road series, but many of them were pretty funny. So here we have the 10 most common types of preppers. Now, these are people who are into this, into prepping. Long story short, there are people who are prepping for the downfall of civilization in various terms, and the types of preppers there are. And I think by combining how the world ends to with how people would try to how they would survive the ending of society as we know it, kind of makes a can tell us how we want to tell our stories. And like I said, some of this falls into, those of us that love ourselves in tabletop role playing. I can already see by reading through this common list, and this is from trueprepper.com, that that we could see ourselves like this is kind of a character class or a skill set or something like that, and letting players pick the different types. So I'm sorry. Here in red, we have the different types of preppers. Everything from typical to doomsday to wilderness and so on. And we're going to go through many of these. So, and this is just a very generalized list. I'm sure with this website and other places, you can get in far more detail. Um, so there's the typical prepper, and I would say a typical prepper in a tabletop role-playing game would be a character that has a little mix of everything. They even says here they have a solid plan. They are aware of local threats and regional risks. They have supplies that last around 2 months, and they don't talk about preparedness much except with their family and inner circle. And that seems like a typical type of prepper. There's the doomsday prepper, um, brought to the forefront by a TV show over 10 years old. Doomsday preppers are not nearly as common as you may think. I could see doomsday preppers as like ones who uh, unfortunately would be talking about, like, they're the doom and gloom. They may have a religious bent to it, or they may have a cultism attached to them in your role playing game, and um, I could see like the doomsday preppers may have some kind of like they're putting together some kind of like evidence, like an oracle would, more than just scientific physical evidence, but looking at the stars and tarot and astrology, combining that with the physical evidence that we see today. There's also the wilderness survivalist. And we see wilderness survivalists even today. There are people who are like practice their primitive skills. They go out with themselves, or was it Naked and Afraid and Bear Grylls and these other people. There's plenty of television shows that deal with wilderness survivalists. Sometimes the wilderness survivalist type of survivalist is the type that if society falls, they may not even realize it, or they're already living a life based around the fall of society anyway. And we've seen this trope in plenty of television and movies where we have ourselves a character who wants to be by themselves and wants to live out in the wilderness anyway. And people think that they're a little bit kooky, kind of. And oftentimes they have few materials. They basically carry everything in a backpack, and but they know the wilderness that they live in, whether it's a jungle or a forest or volcanic region or coastline or something like that. Very many times they're usually uh, experts at a particular region and whatnot. Um, then there's the minimalist prepper. I would say the minimalist prepper would be the person that like is fully in encompassed around society itself, whether you work in insurance or you're a business person or you're a nurse or a truck driver or something, but you have just enough in your basement or in the trunk of your car or something to be able to leave. And story wise, this often you often have this where someone or a bunch of characters live in a major city or whatnot, and or they have gone on a trip or whatever, and you realize that they actually do have the skills to survive, but they still are very much um, intrinsic to society or whatever, and then they have to escape a major part of the downfall of society to go out to um, away from the blasted regions or something. There's the off-grid homesteader. Similar to the wilderness survivalist, the homesteader basically lives in one region and one area. They have a home, whether it's like a cave or a cabin or a farm, and they live off-grid. They use whether they live in a basically a hand-built cabin or they have solar panels or something like that. Oftentimes they're the type that like immediately pull the shotgun out and walk out on the front stoop to keep the riffraff away. Sometimes their entire properties surrounded by like barbed wire and a whole bunch of like keep out, don't worry about the dogs, worry about the owner with a big picture of a gun pointed at your face or something like that. Yeah, off-grid homesteaders. Oftentimes you'll see in media with like a bunker underneath, and the off-grid homesteader for both tabletop role-playing games and story-wise is often a way for us to get together a bunch of different characters who all end up in one location to talk about what the downfall was like. We have ourselves, there's always the naysayer that's like, we're going to bring back society, or this is stupid, or I'm going to go off on my own. And we often are given our a map of the region, right? Like everyone comes together, and it's the from 5 to 15 individuals are there who explain to the audience what is going on. And in a tabletop role playing game, this may be a way for the players to, like, maybe all the players have like 4 or 5 extra characters because death is very much uh, on the table. Maybe it's very like OSR type, or it may be that the players are have all lost something and now they're trying to rebuild society. And this could also be a mechanical effect in a tabletop role playing game, like, oh no, you have access to your tech and your skills, but if you really want to recover, you have to have a home base, and this may be the home base. The off-grid homesteader may also be like a nomadic group of like vehicles or sailing craft. Like there was a television show called The Last Ship, and it was basically I think it was a destroyer or something, a naval ship, and they were going on an exercise, and then there was a pandemic, and it was the end of the world, and then the naval ship and its crew are trying to reestablish society, and this I consider that to be the same thing. They primarily lived off grid, but they would have to get fuel. They were trying to reestablish communications. They needed to get food and things like that. So I would say that even if it's mobile, if there's some place for the players to return to in a post apocalypse, that kind of counts too. Um, Let's see if anybody, if anybody else is still here. Hey, thank you very much. There's only two of you here live, which is fine. No big deal. Thank you very much. But there might be others who might want to take part in this as well. And again, I love myself some post-apocalypse, like whether it's zombies. There's the third installment of A Quiet Place Day One will be coming to movies very soon. That's again a an alien dystopia with an alien invasion where everyone has to be quiet. There was also for a short time, Netflix had the version known as Bird Box, where people had to blind themselves because there was a horror that was very Lovecraftian, eldritch horror that if you looked at it, it would drive you insane. It would basically, you would be looking at the most horrific image ever, and then you would want to um, uh, self delete and maybe even self delete others that were around you. The lone wolf prepper is another one. Now, as society is in full force, the lone wolf prepper is kind of embraced by like the super spy, the one who in 30 seconds can always get up, grab a backpack, and get the hell out. They got a go bag, and they have like false identities. We see this plenty of times. The Jason Bournes, the any Mission Impossible, 007, like all the spy flicks that we've ever seen tend to have lone wolf preppers in it, kind of known as the gray man concept. And this is the person that the Reacher series is another one. This is the person that pays for everything in cash. They have a bunch of disguises. They seem to have stacks of money from your top five biggest countries around the world, and plus bars of gold and coins, maybe some a stamp collection or something. They tend to have keys to storage containers everywhere around the world. But in a post-apocalypse, there's also the lone wolf prepper who literally is like, I don't want to befriend anyone. I've got my motorcycle or beat up, off-road vehicle. I've got my backpack and get the hell away from me. Now, of course, the lone wolf prepper probably has many of the above skills and below skills from a prepper that we'll see, but this is a person that doesn't want to be attached to the group. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to embrace this in tabletop role playing games because you the best lone wolf prepper is like a lone wolf and cub. It's like a Wolverine character where the character says they don't want to be connected to anyone, but there is something that draws them into the group. And oftentimes, when we have players that want to make a lone wolf, they forget that as the character is saying the thing, the player shouldn't be playing the thing, if that makes sense. It's like playing a cowardly character. The character can say that they are cowardly, but the player should always involve them in the action. And the lone wolf prepper, like Wolverine, like Lone Wolf and Cub, and plenty of these stories, yeah, Wolverine always, pouts and says, I don't need to be attached to you guys. He always comes back and finds someone to take care of because like Wolverine, he always finds a young innocent in the show. I think one of the best lone wolf characters that was very inclusive in science fiction was the character of Amos in The Expanse, who basically was a sociopath and seemed to find people to lead him on the path of salvation. And so at the same time, while he was a bit of a sociopath, he was vicariously leading a life of of honor and justice and um, emotion because of his apathy. And then he was living through other people's and attaching himself to other people's desires. So yeah, one of the best lone wolf characters that was Community. Then we have community preppers. Um, there's like find like-minded people to start prepping with or spread prepping through your existing community. This is very common, right? Where we have like the day after, or we have what's the video game that became the HBO series, The Last of Us, and things like that. Community prepping also is like the Fallout series, where there's a community of people who are like-minded, and their survival is based on something. Oftentimes, we have the yin yanging of the community, where it's a very evil, what we would consider evil, uh, moral, immoral, decadent community, but there's something that is allowing them to survive. Or we have the utopian community that has a dark side to it, right? Like, oh, this thanks utopian community for inviting us in with open arms. Oh, you guys make sausage out of your old folks. Oh, yeah, maybe I don't want to be here. Then there's the armchair prepper. That's, of course, that's like me. like like I know about this stuff, and but I don't practice it maybe so much. I suppose in a tabletop role playing game, an armchair prepper is the kind of person that's like surviving by the skin of their teeth. They're like hanging on by their fingernails, but they have to steal from other people to really survive because they know, but they don't know. Um, the There's the urban prepper, and an urban prepper is like the person who's knows how to survive in an urban environment. Maybe they know the underground, like the sewer system or subway system or something like that. They know the ins and outs of going inside of buildings, up and down stairs and elevator shafts and rooftops and scaling across that kind of thing. Also, urban preppers may be the type that are um, gang related, meaning like they roll with a small gang of individuals. They've taken over a city center. We see this plenty of times in lots of movies. I suppose the movie Civil War, most recent movie Civil War, kind of is has a many urban preppers plus a mix of the other ones like community preppers and lone wolf preppers as well. Um, Famous Preppers says, if you want to learn more, we cover more details in 10 celebrity preppers ready for anything and 10 preps you literally can't afford. Famous preppers are similar to the doomsday preppers, where these are the most um, not just famous, but also I would categorize them as the most charismatic or alluring. The individuals that have been talking about it the most before the downfall of civilization, and everyone wants to follow them now. I would also say that these would be like politicians, corporate leaders. These are anarchists, people who have gone off grid that are known for their being famous to talk about such a thing. Though today they would be podcasters and internet celebrities that are known for their survivalistic content that they've created. And now they don't necessarily need to be cultist, but I would throw in some cultism, religious affiliations as well, whether they think of themselves as divine beings. Also, those that are famous are like the great recruiters that want to rebuild society in their own image. Um, there was a television show known as Designated Survivor, based in the U.S., where we have our government has a system that if the top levels of government are destroyed, we start going down the list to the next available individual who becomes the leader of the government, so that we have a continuation of government. And one of the characters, actor Kiefer Sutherland, plays a character who's like the Secretary of Education or something. He's like number 15 or 20 down the list, and no, he's like the Secretary of Housing or Transportation or something. I think the Secretary of Education was in Battlestar Galactica, and the downfall of that society in Battlestar Galactica. And one of the ladies was like, who's the president?" And they're like, "I think you are, ma'am." And then there's other prepper types like modern preppers, bio preppers, organic preppers, housewife preppers, political preppers, and who like right wing and left wing preppers and stuff. And I think For the other types of preppers, such as like modern preppers would have like a lot of high tech solutions, like portable solar panels, and heck, maybe even the ability to restart like nuclear power plants and solar wind and things like that. Like I could see um, electric cars or using biofuels and things to get some vehicles going, that kind of thing. Bio preppers are definitely people who are not just based on um, prepping for pandemics, but also like chemical warfare, nanotechnology, genetic modification, and that they are prepared against that kind of thing. Like if chemicals are going to be sprayed into the community or something like that. Organic preppers are people who like collect organic foods, materials, seeds, keeping themselves around by having a stockpile of foods that will survive the maybe diseases that have spread, or locusts, or bugs, or the again the ending of the world because all the bees die and the pollination is dead. And then there's the housewife prepper, which I don't like the word of the housewife, but it says some moms take the mantle of getting everyone in their house organized and prepared. While very close to typical preppers, these gals approach prepping with a nurturing mindset. Don't underestimate female or housewife preppers. Most of them are just as badass, if not more, than their guy counterparts. I would dare say that I don't particularly like the way it's placed. I would say I would make a differentiation between the hunter prepper and the gatherer prepper, meaning like the hunter prepper is like the similar to the lone wolf, where you have a small group of people that range outwards and explore. Maybe they are scouts. They are hunting for food. Maybe they are hunting for gangs and things like that. A little bit more violent externally, whereas the internal, the gatherer, is like gathering supplies, canned goods, gathering books that are needed, maybe electronics, um, materials to fix maybe communication systems, and are far more about being quiet and making sure everyone is educated, making sure everyone has their needs for survival and things like that. So I would dare say that I would change the housewife part and probably split them into two, and basically put the ranger versus the vanguard, I guess, would be my titles for that kind of post-apocalyptic version of survivalism. And so going now, talking about tabletop role playing games. I'm going to end this here and stop sharing this out here. For tabletop role playing games and post apocalyptic and such, um, the reason why I wanted to talk about some of these is because sometimes in like a post apocalypse, we are enamored by one thing and ignore other things. So, for example, and this isn't necessarily a a bad thing. It just means that sometimes we don't want to be hyper focused on one. So, for an example, in let's take Road Warrior as an example. So we know in the Road Warrior series that it's basically a giant car chase, right? And moving from locale to locale. And I think if we wanted to make a tabletop role playing game based on it, you absolutely positively have to have yourself some car chases in it. But we have to tell ourselves, like, are there conclaves of humanity still alive? Are there any green spaces left? And if there aren't, how are people surviving? Like, there's a lot of calories being burned in a lot of these movies. Where are they getting all these calories from? Because there's a lot of like hardcore six pack ab men and women and others that are in these movies. I would like to know where they're getting their foodstuffs from. Now, there is a what I love about the Mad Max Road Warrior series is that we are given very slight information about the rest of the world, like Bullet Town and these other places that have like hyper focused on one aspect of survival, making them very important to the rest of survival in this post-apocalyptic world. So I could see a place that where they may raise animals or grow food, or they make bullets, or they have a gasoline, or they have water, and there's a reason why everybody wants it, but there's also a reason why no one's destroying the place, because everyone needs these specific resources to survive. And um, if we go to the televised version, and of course there's the video game version of Fallout, we do have ourselves with like community preppers, and one of our character goes to the outside world, and we see that there are so many different factions in this outside world, and to embrace that so that we can tell different stories. Maybe everyone isn't walking around with you know BFG, weaponry and things like that. Maybe there are places where science is still uh, being developed, where we see this far more often than a little bit in zombie apocalypse movies, where we have our conclaves of the military, conclaves of scientists, maybe conclaves of the preppers themselves. Maybe there are people who have sectioned themselves off. Maybe they live on an island, or they live underground, or they've barricaded themselves up into like 3 or 4 buildings, and they cross from building to building with like cable cars or something like that, and roam out very rarely. And our player characters might be those who are going out, basically dungeon delving, using the fantasy term, and finding these different communities, and trying to reestablish society or bring it back together, or um, the Planet of the Apes series, like what is it, Rise, Dawn, Rise, War, and now Kingdom, which all the movies are excellent in my opinion. But even this latest iteration, I hope they do a trilogy of these with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And the cool part, like Gaster was saying, like it would be cool where humanity is starting to be overtaken by something else out there, not necessarily machines like in the Terminator, where Cyberdyne takes over in machines, but a new species is coming about. And I like that idea. It could be humanity is mutating as well, which would be pretty interesting. Maybe there's a virus or bacteria, could be alien, could be man-made, that could be mutating humanity. Or more and more humans are losing their intelligence, and the player characters are the last of their kind, not giving away anything in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. We understand from the previous series that a drug to help cure Alzheimer's is the very drug that has made apes and those simians smarter, but also there's something that's making humans dumber, and they're losing their intelligence. They can't remember things, they can't comprehend language and such. Um, but we see that there's a twist to that in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I think is really cool. You also can't get by the fact that if there's like a virus, like a zombie virus or something, maybe there might be individuals who are immune, or maybe they have a birthmark, or they have something about them that makes them immune to a disease or whatever. Or maybe there's a transformation in the world, like climate change or something, where humanity is now living in the crevices of locations around the earth that they normally wouldn't live, like on cargo ships that are lashed together, or in the shadow of volcanoes, or deep deserts, or um, underwater in submarines, or something like that. Maybe humanity has to like carve themselves out these places, and the player characters have to travel from the you know the coldest regions of Earth to the hottest deserts to make contact with another group of people. So anyway, I thought today that we would talk about this kind of stuff. I know people like to talk about it, and I was trying to think of a good subject matter as well. we'll get into some other things next week, maybe some game design and such, and let you guys know about the development of this Obsidian Star. But guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. I hope those who catch this later, especially if you're new, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I probably starting next week and further on, some people have left some brilliant comments. And what I will do is I'm thinking of either taking a day like a Wednesday and going over everyone's comments, or maybe I might start each show out with the top comments or something. I'm not sure. You guys let me know about that as well for those who are not able to take part live, but still want to get your 2 cents in and still want to get your comments and thoughts out there as well. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. And also, again, if you're watching this later, um, um, thank you very much for spending your valuable time here with me. I really appreciate it. I hope I can make some change in your tabletop role playing um, endeavors going into the future. So, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. And bye. I'll see you later. Peace.